My final shift ended with the screech of steel and a searing pain ripping through my arm. 1 second, I was tightening bolts on the hydraulic press at Northridge Manufacturing in Helena, Montana. The next, the machine snapped like a wild animal. Metal tore into my arm. My co-workers' voices blurred into sirens, shouting, and the clatter of tools hitting the floor. When I woke up in the ICU, wrapped in tubes and pain medication, the first thing I did, out of instinct, was call the two people I had always believed were my parents, Alan and Leslie Albert. I expected panic, concern, maybe even a shaky, "We're on our way." Instead, Alan's voice came cold and flat. "James, we can't do anything for you. Don't bother us with this." Then he hung up. I stared at the phone long after the line went dead. 32 years of my life. 32 years of sacrifice, loyalty, and fighting for their approval. And the moment I needed them most, they treated me like an inconvenience, a burden to discard. The doctor came in shortly after, his face serious. He explained that I had severe fractures and nerve damage in my right arm. Without immediate surgery, costing $87,000, I might never regain full use of it. Even with successful surgery, I was looking at months of recovery and physical therapy. I lay there in that cold hospital room, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I was going to pay for any of it. My insurance was minimal. My savings were non-existent. I was a factory worker living paycheck to paycheck in a town that forgot people like me existed. That moment should have been the worst of my life. But then I picked up my phone and saw the notifications. My younger brother Michael had posted on social media, "Happy 65th, Dad. Best celebration ever. Family is everything." The photo showed Alan, Leslie, Michael, and a dozen friends celebrating at a restaurant. Balloons, cake, smiling faces. I wasn't in the picture. I hadn't even been invited. While I lay in a hospital bed with a crushed arm, unable to afford the surgery that might save my ability to work, they were celebrating, laughing, living their best lives. Without me. Lying there in that hospital bed, my mind flooded with memories. Memories I'd spent years trying to rationalize, trying to understand. I remembered my 8th birthday in the year 2000. I woke up excited, hoping for something, anything, to make me feel special. Downstairs, there was no cake, no decorations, no birthday cards. Leslie handed me a worn sweater that smelled like must and old fabric. "Michael outgrew this," she said flatly. "You can have it." Michael was only 4 years old at the time. A 4-year-old's hand-me-downs for an 8-year-old's birthday present. 2 months later, Michael's birthday arrived. The house transformed. Balloons covered the ceiling. A rented bounce house dominated the backyard. 30 kids from his preschool ran around eating cake and playing games. Leslie and Alan beamed with pride, taking photos, posting on social media about their perfect little boy. I stood in the corner of the kitchen, pretending to be busy, hiding the tears welling in my eyes. I remembered my high school graduation in 2010. I'd worked so hard, studied every night, earned honors. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment they'd finally see me. Finally, be proud. I stood on the front porch of our small house, holding my diploma, waiting. Inside, music blared. Michael, 14 at the time, was having friends over for a video game tournament Alan had paid for. New console, new TV, pizza for everyone. Nobody came outside to congratulate me. Nobody even asked to see the diploma. I stood there under the dim porch light until it got dark, then quietly went to my room. For the past 10 years since then, I'd been sending money home every month. $400, $500, sometimes $600 when I worked overtime. money I couldn't afford to spare. Alan never said thank you. Not once. Leslie would call occasionally to say, "We need help with the electric bill," or "The car needs repairs." Always framed as if I owed them something, as if helping them was the least I could do. Meanwhile, Michael, now 28, had never held a job for longer than 3 months. Alan had bought him 2 cars, brand new, combined value over $50,000. Leslie had paid off Michael's gambling debts, which totaled more than $12,000. And yet somehow, they always needed my money. Every family dinner I attended, Michael dominated the conversation. Alan laughed at his jokes. Leslie hung on his every word. I could talk about working double shifts to fix critical equipment at the factory, about nearly getting promoted to supervisor, about anything, and Alan would grunt, change the subject, or simply ignore me. I learned to stay quiet, to make myself small, to hope that if I just kept trying, kept being good, kept sending money, kept showing up, maybe one day they'd love me. But as I lay in that hospital bed, staring at that birthday photo on my phone, I finally understood the truth I'd been avoiding my whole life. They were never going to love me. And I had no idea why. A nurse came in to check my vitals, and behind her, a hospital administrator entered, looking nervous. "Mr. Albert," she said carefully, "there's an unusual situation we need to discuss." I sat up as much as I could with my injured arm. "What kind of situation?" "During your emergency surgery, we needed to perform rapid blood typing for transfusions. Your DNA was automatically cross-referenced with the National Missing Persons Database. It's standard protocol for trauma patients in federal healthcare systems." My heart started pounding. "Okay." "There was a match, Mr. Albert. A very significant match. Federal agents need to speak with you immediately." Before I could ask what she meant, 2 people appeared at my door. They wore dark suits. Badges glinted under the fluorescent lights. FBI. Special Agent Raymond Torres and Agent Lisa Huang stepped into my room with expressions that were serious, but not cold. Not accusatory. Heavy with something I couldn't identify. "Mr. Albert," Torres began, his voice deep and measured, "we need to confirm some information about you. Can you state your full legal name?" "James Michael Albert," I said, my throat dry. "Date of birth?" "April 19th, 1992. "And your parents' names?" "Alan and Leslie Albert." I paused, fear creeping into my chest. "Why are you asking me this? What's going on?" Agent Huang exchanged a glance with Torres. Then she opened a folder and slid a photograph across my hospital bed. It was a picture of a toddler, maybe 2 years old. Bright eyes, curly hair, and a distinct crescent-shaped birthmark on his chin. I stared at that photo, and my stomach dropped. I have that same birthmark. "This child's name was Warren Williams," Torres said carefully. "He was kidnapped from his family's home in Green Bay, Wisconsin on April 19, 1994, his 2nd birthday. His family reported him missing immediately. 3 ransom demands were made over the next 2 years. His parents paid $3 million total. But Warren was never returned." I couldn't breathe. "Why? Why are you showing me this?" Agent Huang leaned forward. "Because your DNA matches the DNA profile Warren's biological parents submitted 30 years ago. We've run the test 3 times to confirm. The match is 99.9%. The room spun. "That's impossible," I whispered. "I'm James Albert. I was born here in Montana. I have a birth certificate. I went to school. I have memories." "Your birth certificate is forged," Torres interrupted gently. "Your Social Security number was created using fraudulent documentation. You were enrolled in school under a stolen identity framework. We've verified all of this with the Social Security Administration. Huang's voice was softer now. James, you are Warren Williams. You were kidnapped 30 years ago today, on your second birthday. And the people who raised you, Alan and Leslie Albert, are the ones who took you. The words hit me like a physical blow. Everything I thought I knew about myself shattered in an instant. The coldness, the favoritism, the abandonment, the feeling of never belonging. It all made sense now. They never loved me because I wasn't their son. I was their crime. I was evidence that could send them to prison. Agent Torres placed a business card on the table beside my bed. Your biological parents, Paul and Lisa Williams, have been searching for you for 30 years. They never gave up. They've been notified. They're boarding a flight from Wisconsin right now. They'll be here tomorrow morning. After they left, I sat alone in that hospital room, the beeping of monitors the only sound. I picked up my phone with shaking hands and searched. Warren Williams, kidnapping, 1994. The screen filled with articles. Toddler kidnapped on his birthday from Williams' estate. Family pays $3 ransom over 2 years. Child still missing. Cold case, Warren Williams' search continues 30 years later. Billionaire Energy CEO never gives up hope for missing son. Photos of Paul and Lisa Williams at press conferences, tearful and desperate. Photos of the Williams estate, a massive stone mansion with acres of manicured lawns. I read every article I could find. Paul Williams, founder and CEO of Williams Energy Solutions, a renewable energy corporation worth $4.7 billion. Lisa Williams, philanthropist and advocate for missing children, who'd founded 3 organizations dedicated to finding abducted children. They'd never stopped searching for me. The ransom details made me sick. First demand, May 1994, $500,000, paid within 48 hours. Second demand, November 1994, $1 million, paid within 1 week. Third demand, March 1996, $1.5 million, paid immediately. Warren was never returned. The FBI investigation went cold in 1998. I found employment records showing Alan had worked as a security contractor for the Williams estate. Leslie had been a part-time housekeeper. They knew the family. They knew the security gaps. They knew the daily routines. After kidnapping me, they vanished, changed identities, created false documentation, moved 200 miles away to Helena, Montana. And they raised me, not as their son, but as evidence they had to keep hidden. Every time Alan looked at me with cold eyes, it wasn't disappointment. It was fear. Every time Leslie gave me those forced smiles, it wasn't love, it was survival. Michael, born in 1996, 2 years after the kidnapping, was their real son, their fresh start, the child they could love without guilt. And I was just the secret they couldn't get rid of. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, my mind replaying every memory through this new, horrifying lens. At 6 a.m., there was a soft knock on my door. A nurse stepped in. Mr. Albert, or should I say, Mr. Williams, your biological parents have arrived. They took the red-eye flight. They're here. My heart stopped. Already? But you said tomorrow morning. It is morning, she said gently. It's 6 a.m. You've been sitting here all night. I hadn't even noticed. The door opened, and 2 people stepped inside. Paul Williams was tall with silver hair, wearing a wrinkled suit, clearly dressed in a hurry. Lisa Williams had red, swollen eyes from crying during the entire flight. They stood frozen 3 feet from my bed. I couldn't move. I was looking at strangers, yet their faces felt familiar in ways I couldn't explain. Paul's eyes were the same shape as mine. Lisa's nose, the jawline I saw in the mirror every morning. Lisa broke first. She rushed to my bedside, her hands shaking as she reached for my face. She touched my cheek so gently, as if I might shatter. "Warren," she whispered, "my baby, my baby, you're alive." Paul followed, slower, more controlled, but his voice cracked when he spoke. "We never stopped looking. Not one single day in 30 years. I tried to speak, but no words came out." Lisa was crying, touching my face, my hair, memorizing every detail. "You look just like your father. You have his eyes. Oh, God, you're really here." Agent Torres entered behind them with a thick folder of documentation. DNA test results. Baby photos of Warren Williams next to current photos of me. The match was undeniable. Birthmark comparisons. Dental records from my childhood that aligned with Warren's baby teeth records. Paul sat beside my bed, and with a voice thick with emotion, he told me the story. April 19th, 1994. My second birthday. The house was decorated for a party that afternoon. Lisa put me down for my usual nap at 1 p.m. When she checked 45 minutes later, the window was open. I was gone. The baby monitor had been disabled. Security cameras showed a 12-minute gap. Professionally done. No forced entry. Whoever took me knew the estate layout perfectly. The first ransom call came 36 hours later. A distorted voice. Cold. Mechanical. "We have your son. $500,000 in unmarked bills. Instructions to follow. Contact police, and he dies." Paul and Lisa paid immediately. They waited for me to be returned. I wasn't. 6 months later, another call. Another $1 million. Another broken promise. 2 years after my kidnapping, a final demand. $1.5 million. They paid everything they could liquidate. Then, silence. No more calls, no more demands, no more contact. The FBI suggested I was likely dead. Paul and Lisa refused to believe it. They spent the next 28 years searching. They spent over $15 million on private investigators, rewards, awareness campaigns. They funded DNA databases. They lobbied Congress for better missing children laws. Everything they did was to find me. 2 years after you were taken, Lisa said, squeezing my hand, we had another child. Your sister, Violet. We needed hope. But we never stopped looking for you. We celebrated your birthday every year. We kept your room exactly as it was. We never gave up. Paul pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. A woman with my eyes and Lisa's smile, standing in an art gallery. This is Violet. She's 28 now. She teaches art history at the University of Wisconsin. She grew up knowing she had a brother out there somewhere. She painted you, imagined versions of you at different ages, her whole life. I stared at the photo of my sister, a sister I never knew existed. Paul noticed the hospital paperwork on my bedside table, the $87,000 surgery estimate. His jaw tightened. This is already taken care of. I've spoken with the hospital administrator. All your medical expenses, surgery, recovery, physical therapy, everything are covered. You're our son. You'll never have to worry about money again. I tried to protest, but Lisa stopped me. Let us do this. We've waited 30 years to take care of you. For the first time in my life, I felt wanted. Not tolerated, not obligated. Wanted. Agent Torres stepped forward. Mr. Williams, we're executing arrest warrants for Alan and Leslie Albert this afternoon. We have surveillance on their residence in Helena. They're both home. If you want to be present when we make the arrests, we can arrange that. I looked at Paul and Lisa, my real parents, though the words still felt foreign. Then I thought about Alan's voice on the phone. Don't bother us with this. I thought about 32 years of being treated like I didn't matter. I thought about that birthday photo while I lay in ICU. I want to be there, I said. I want them to see my face and know that everything they did is coming back to destroy them. Paul placed a hand on my shoulder. Then we go together, as a family. 2 weeks later, after surgery and initial recovery, I was discharged from the hospital. My arm was in a cast and sling with orders for physical therapy 3 times per week for the next 6 months. The doctors warned me that full recovery would take 8 to 12 months, and I might never regain 100% grip strength. But I was alive, and I had answers. Paul and Lisa offered to have me come directly to their estate in Green Bay, but I insisted on one thing first. I needed to confront Alan and Leslie. The FBI arranged for me to accompany them. We drove from Green Bay, Wisconsin to Helena, Montana, a 14-hour drive with stops. Paul and Lisa followed in a separate car with their attorney. I sat in the back of the unmarked FBI vehicle with Agent Torres and Agent Huang, staring out the window at landscapes I'd driven through my whole life. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt real anymore. I was James Albert, except I wasn't. I was Warren Williams, except I didn't know who that was. I was someone caught between 2 identities, 2 lives, 2 families. We arrived in Helena at 4:47 p.m. The FBI vehicles parked 3 blocks from the Albert house. My house. Except it was never my house. Torres turned to me. Last chance to wait in the car. You don't have to see them. I shook my head. I need to see their faces when they realize it's over. We walked up the driveway in formation, Torres and Huang in front, me behind them, 4 tactical agents flanking us. This was a federal arrest for a 30-year-old kidnapping case. They weren't taking chances. I saw Alan's beat-up truck in the same spot it had been for 15 years. Through the kitchen window, I could see Leslie washing dishes. She had no idea her entire world was about to collapse. Torres raised his fist and pounded on the door. 3 sharp knocks. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it in my ears. The door opened. Leslie stood there, dish soap still on her hands. When she saw me standing between 2 FBI agents, her face went completely white. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Mrs. Albert, Torres said, holding up his badge. FBI, we need to speak with you and your husband immediately. Leslie's eyes found mine. Fear, guilt, panic, recognition. She knew. She'd always known this day might come. James, she whispered. What's going on? Your arm. Are you okay? Don't, I said quietly. Don't pretend to care now. Heavy footsteps on stairs. Alan appeared behind Leslie, still in his work clothes. He saw the agents, then me, and his entire body went rigid. His eyes met mine, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. What's this about? Alan demanded, his voice hard but trembling underneath. Torres stepped forward. Mr. and Mrs. Albert, we have federal warrants for your arrest in connection with the April 1994 kidnapping of Warren Williams, 3 counts of extortion, wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Leslie's legs buckled. She grabbed the door frame. No, that's not. That was 30 years ago. Alan's face turned red. This is ridiculous. James, what the hell did you tell them? I felt a strange calm wash over me. I didn't tell them anything, Alan. My DNA told them everything. The DNA you couldn't erase. The evidence you couldn't hide. Leslie started crying, that familiar manipulation I'd seen 1,000 times. We raised you. We gave you a home, food, clothes. You stole me, I said, my voice rising for the first time in my life. You took me from my real parents on my 2nd birthday. You extorted $3 million from them. You made them think I might be dead for 30 years. And you raised me like I was a burden you couldn't get rid of. Every single day, You punished me for a crime I didn't commit. The crime of existing. Alan took a step forward, aggressive. Two agents immediately moved between us, hands on their weapons. You have no idea what you're talking about, boy. Agent Huang cut him off, holding up a thick folder. We have financial records tracing ransom payments to accounts you controlled. We have employment records showing you worked at the Williams estate with full access. We have security footage from 1994 reanalyzed with modern facial recognition. It's you, Mr. Albert, at a gas station 50 miles from Green Bay, 3 hours after Warren was reported missing. We have DNA evidence. We have everything. She opened the folder, showing them their own bank statements from 1994-1996. Deposits of $500,000, $1.5 million, all documented. Leslie collapsed to her knees, right there in the doorway, sobbing uncontrollably. "We were desperate," she cried. "We were drowning in debt. We just needed money to start over. It wasn't supposed to go this far. We were going to give him back after the first payment. But then—" She looked up at Alan with streaming mascara. "But then you got greedy. You kept demanding more. And then Michael was born. And we couldn't give him back because we'd already taken the money. And Warren looked so much like Paul Williams, and every time I looked at him, I saw what we'd done, and I just couldn't love him. God forgive me. I tried, but I couldn't." "Shut up, Leslie," Alan barked. "Don't say another word." But 30 years of guilt poured out of her like a broken dam. Torres nodded to his team. "Alan Albert, Leslie Albert, you're under arrest." 4 agents moved in simultaneously. Alan tried to pull away, but they had him in handcuffs within seconds. Leslie didn't resist. She just kept sobbing. Neighbors emerged from their houses, phones out, recording everything. As the handcuffs clicked around Alan's wrists, he turned to me. His expression shifted, anger to something almost like regret. "You were never supposed to find out," he said quietly. "We were so careful. 30 years. We almost made it." I stepped closer, close enough that only he could hear. "You didn't almost make it. You raised me in a prison of your own guilt. And now you'll spend the rest of your life in an actual one." Alan's face hardened. "You think your fancy biological parents are going to love you? You're 32 years old. You're a stranger to them. You'll always be James Albert, the factory worker. You'll never be Warren Williams, their perfect son." I smiled coldly. "Maybe, but at least I'll find out. You made sure I never had that choice." They were led away, Leslie still crying, Alan stone-faced. As the FBI vehicles drove off, Paul and Lisa emerged from their car across the street. Lisa pulled me into a careful hug. "It's over. It's finally over." But I knew it wasn't over. It was just beginning. 6 hours later, I sat in an observation room at the FBI field office, watching through one-way glass as Alan and Leslie were interrogated in separate rooms. Paul and Lisa sat beside me. Lisa held my good hand. Paul stared at the people who'd stolen his son, his jaw so tight I could hear his teeth grinding. In room A, Leslie sat across from Agent Huang. Her attorney, a public defender, advised her to remain silent. But Leslie couldn't stop talking. The guilt had been eating her alive for 30 years. "I want to tell the truth," she said to Huang. "I've been living with this secret for too long. I'm tired." And then she confessed everything. Alan and Leslie were drowning in debt in 1994. Credit cards maxed at $47,000. Facing foreclosure. Alan's security business was failing. Leslie's housekeeping jobs barely covered groceries. Alan worked part-time security for the Williams estate. He saw the family's wealth and became obsessed with the idea that they had too much while he had nothing. Leslie cleaned the Williams house twice a week. She played with me, changed my diapers, learned my routine. She learned the security system. She learned when Lisa would be distracted. Alan came up with the plan. Take Warren during his birthday party, when the house would be chaotic. Demand ransom. Get enough to disappear and start over. On April 19, 1994, during Leslie's cleaning shift, she disabled the baby monitor in my room. She opened the window. She handed me to Alan waiting outside. They drugged me with children's cold medicine to keep me quiet. They drove for 6 hours to a motel in North Dakota. He cried for his mother for 3 days, Leslie sobbed. He kept saying, "Mama, Mama." He was so scared, but we couldn't take him back. We'd already committed. The first ransom demand came 2 days later, $500,000. Paul and Lisa paid within 48 hours. Alan and Leslie planned to return me and disappear with the money. But Alan changed his mind. He said we could get more, Leslie admitted. He said people like the Williams wouldn't even miss another million. Second demand, $1 million. The Williams paid within a week. Third demand, $1.5 million, final payment. Paul and Lisa sold property to raise it. Alan never intended to return me. By May 1994, they'd already created false documents. For $15,000, a forger gave them a birth certificate listing James Michael Albert, born April 19, 1992, Helena, Montana, Social Security card. Baptism records from a church that had burned down so it couldn't be verified. They moved to Montana, 200 miles from Green Bay. Enrolled me in kindergarten in 1997. Nobody questioned anything. When Leslie got pregnant in late 1995, she thought maybe she could forget what they'd done. Michael was born in August 1996, their biological son, their fresh start. When Michael was born, I thought I could move past it, Leslie said. But every time I looked at James, at Warren, I saw my crime. I couldn't love him. Every hug felt like a lie. Agent Huang asked the critical question. You received $3 million. Where is it now? Leslie's answer shocked everyone. It's gone. All of it. Alan was a compulsive spender. By 2005, they'd burned through most of it. New cars, failed business ventures, Michael's private school, vacations, bad investments, legal fees for Michael's arrests. By 2010, they were back in debt. That's when they started asking me for money every month. The cruel irony, I was paying my kidnappers with my own wages. We never told James the truth because if he knew, he'd report us, Leslie said. We needed him to think he was our son. We needed him to feel obligated. In Room B, Alan sat stone-faced across from Agent Torres. His attorney instructed him to remain silent. For 45 minutes, Alan said nothing. Torres laid out all the evidence: bank records, phone records, surveillance footage, forged documents. Leslie's testimony from the next room, DNA evidence. Finally, Alan spoke. I want a deal. Full confession in exchange for 20 years instead of life. Torres leaned back. That's not my decision. That's up to the prosecutor. And the family you destroyed. Torres walked out and entered our observation room. He's offering a deal, Torres said. Full confession for reduced sentence. Paul stood immediately, face red with rage. Absolutely not. No deals. I want him in prison until he dies. Lisa looked at me. Warren, it's your choice. You're the victim. What do you want? I stared through the glass at Alan, the man who raised me but never loved me. No deals, I said firmly. I want a trial. I want a jury to hear everything. I want the world to know exactly who they are. The next day, Paul and Lisa took me to Wisconsin. We flew on a private jet, my first time on any plane, leather seats, a flight attendant offering drinks, the surreal quiet of wealth. Everything felt like I was living someone else's life, because I was. Lisa sat beside me, showing me photos on her iPad. "This is Violet, your sister." I stared at the photo of a woman with my eyes standing in an art gallery. "She's been painting you her whole life," Lisa said softly. "Imagined versions of what you might look like." She swiped to another photo, Violet at age 12 holding a large canvas. The painting showed 4 figures, 2 adults, a young girl, and an empty silhouette where a boy should be. "She called it the missing piece," Lisa said, tears in her voice. The car pulled through iron gates into the Williams estate. Manicured lawns stretching for acres. A stone mansion. A private lake. Stables with horses. A greenhouse. I'd grown up in a 900-square-foot rental with peeling paint and a leaking roof. This was supposed to be my home. "This is too much," I whispered. "I don't belong here." "You were born here," Lisa said gently. "This is your home. It always has been." Inside, Lisa led me upstairs to a closed door. Her hand trembled on the knob. "We kept it exactly as it was." She opened the door. I stepped into a time capsule. A toddler's bedroom frozen in 1994. A crib. Toy cars. A rocking chair with a teddy bear. Photos of baby Warren everywhere. Laughing, playing, covered in birthday cake. On the wall, a growth chart with pencil marks. Warren, 6 months, 26 inches. Warren, 1 year, 30 inches. Warren, 18 months, 32 inches. Warren, 2 years, 34 inches. The chart stopped at 34 inches, April 1994. I touched the marks, and my throat tightened. Footsteps on the stairs, quick, urgent. A woman appeared in the doorway, Violet. She stopped when she saw me, her hand flying to her mouth. "Warren?" I didn't know what to say. I wasn't Warren. I was James. Except I wasn't James either. Violet crossed the room and pulled me into a careful hug, avoiding my injured arm. She was crying. "I always knew you'd come home," she said into my shoulder. I drew pictures of this moment. I prayed for it. I stood rigid at first, then slowly wrapped my good arm around her. She was my sister, my blood, my family, even though we were strangers. That night, we sat down for dinner. The 4 of us at a table that seats 12. A chair that had been symbolically empty for 30 years was finally filled. Paul raised his glass. To family. To second chances. And to making sure justice is served. We clinked glasses, but my mind was elsewhere. I thought about Alan and Leslie in FBI custody. I thought about Michael, who still didn't know his parents were kidnappers. And I thought about revenge. For 30 years, they made me feel worthless. Now I had resources I never imagined. Billions of dollars, political connections, the best lawyers in the country. Alan thought he'd gotten away with it. He almost did. But now I had the power to destroy them completely. And I intended to use it. 3 days later, Michael was brought in for questioning. He'd been pulled off his construction site job by federal agents, handcuffed in front of his co-workers, driven to the FBI field office without explanation. Agent Torres sat across from him in an interrogation room. "Your parents have been arrested for kidnapping, extortion, and identity theft," Torres said. Michael's face went pale. "What? That's insane. Kidnapping who?" "Your brother, James." Torres explained everything. "James isn't your biological brother. His real name is Warren Williams. He was kidnapped on his 2nd birthday in 1994. Alan and Leslie extorted $3 million in ransom. They created a false identity and raised Warren as James Albert, for 30 years. Michael listened, his expression shifting from disbelief to horror. "That's impossible," he whispered. "James is my brother. He taught me how to ride a bike." Torres showed him the evidence: DNA results, news articles from 1994, financial records, photos of baby Warren. Michael stared at the documents, hands shaking. "I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know." But as he sat there, memories started clicking into place. The way they always treated James differently. The favoritism. The coldness toward James while showering Michael with love and money. "I thought maybe James had done something wrong when he was young," Michael said slowly. "Something nobody talked about. But I never imagined." He put his head in his hands. "All those years, they treated him like garbage. And I got everything. New cars, college tuition, money whenever I needed it." His voice cracked. "I borrowed $800 from James last year when I lost my job. He wired it to me the same day, even though he was working doubles at the factory. I never paid him back." He looked up at Torres. "Did Michael know?" "We don't have evidence he knew," Torres said. "But you benefited financially from ransom money your entire life." Michael nodded slowly. "I want to testify. I want to tell the court what they did, how they treated him." Torres made a call. 20 minutes later, Michael was led into a private room. I sat on the other side of the table. We stared at each other. Brothers who weren't brothers. A lifetime of shared memories built on lies. "I didn't know," Michael said. My response was quiet, controlled. "But you benefited from it every single day. While I was working myself to death in a factory, you were living off ransom money. So whether you knew or not, you're still guilty." Michael flinched like I'd hit him. We talked for an hour. He apologized. He offered to testify. He asked what I wanted from him. "I want you to tell the jury everything you saw," I said finally. "The favoritism, the neglect, the money they spent on you while I sent them my paychecks. I want the world to understand who they really are." Michael agreed immediately. "When this goes to trial, everything comes out. My life as I know it is over, but it's the least I can do." As I left that room, Agent Torres handed me a document. "The prosecutor is building the case. Alan's attorney rejected all plea negotiations. Alan wants to go to trial. He thinks he can win." I looked at Alan's mugshot on the cover page. His expression was defiant. "Let him think he can win," I said coldly. "I want him confident when the verdict comes in." Paul squeezed my shoulder. "Now you're thinking like a Williams." 5 days after the arrests, the story hit national news. I woke up in the Williams estate to my phone exploding. CNN, Fox News, NBC, MSNBC. My face was on every channel. Kidnapped heir found after 30 years. Billionaire's son raised in poverty by his abductors. From factory worker to fortune, the DNA discovery that changed everything. Social media exploded. Justice for Warren trended worldwide with 4.22 million posts. Comment sections filled with outrage. How do you kidnap a child and then treat him like garbage for 30 years? He sent them money every month while they knew the truth. Heartbreaking. Imagine working in a factory while your real parents are billionaires searching for you. I couldn't leave the estate without security. News vans camped outside the gates. Reporters shouted questions. "Warren, how does it feel to discover you're a billionaire? Will you forgive Alan and Leslie? Are you angry about the life you lost?" It was suffocating. A producer from 60 Minutes reached out, asking for an exclusive interview. Paul advised against it. "You don't owe anyone your story." But I thought about all the years I stayed silent. All the times I swallowed my pain. I want people to know what they did, I said. Not just the kidnapping, the emotional abuse, the favoritism, the abandonment. Before the interview aired, I released a written statement. For 30 years, I lived as James Albert, believing I was unwanted, unloved, and worthless. The truth is more painful than anyone should endure. I was not unwanted. I was stolen. I was not unloved. I was hidden from the people who loved me most. I was not worthless. I was evidence of a crime. Alan and Leslie Albert didn't just kidnap a child. They stole a life, destroyed a family, and spent 3 decades pretending it never happened. I am not looking for sympathy. I am looking for justice. The statement went viral. 15 million people read it in the first day. But in a Montana county jail, Alan read the same statement and crumpled it in his fist. His lawyer sat across from him. We need to humanize you for the jury. Make them understand why you did it. Alan's jaw tightened. Set up the trial. I'll tell my side. They'll understand. 4 months later, in September 2024, the trial began. Federal Courthouse, Helena, Montana. The case, United States of America versus Alan Robert Albert and Leslie Marie Albert. Charges, kidnapping, extortion, 3 counts, wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, obstruction of justice. Maximum sentence, life in prison. The courtroom was packed. Media sketch artists in front rows. Cameras outside broadcasting live. Assistant U.S. Attorney David Martinez stood before the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a complicated case. On April 19, 1994, Alan and Leslie Albert kidnapped a 2-year-old child from his home on his birthday. They extorted $3 million from his desperate parents over 2 years. Then they kept him. They raised him under a false identity. They treated him with neglect and emotional abuse. And when he needed them most, lying in a hospital bed, they abandoned him. Martinez displayed photos, baby Warren, the Williams estate, bank statements showing ransom deposits. The defense will try to complicate this, but remember, they had choices. They chose kidnapping. They chose greed. Now they must face consequences. Defense attorney Martin Cross took a different approach. My clients made a terrible mistake 30 years ago. They were young, desperate, drowning in debt. Did they kidnap Warren Williams? Yes. Did they collect ransom? Yes. But they provided for him for 30 years. They gave him a home, food, education. They raised him as their own. They're not asking for forgiveness. They're asking for understanding. I sat in the gallery between Paul and Lisa, clenching my fists. Provided for me? They gave me survival, not life. On day 3, Michael took the stand. The courtroom buzzed. Alan and Leslie's own son testifying against them. Michael described everything. Warren's 8th birthday. No cake, just a hand-me-down sweater. Michael's birthday. Rented bounce house, 30 kids. Christmas mornings, where Warren got practical items, while Michael got piles of gifts. Cars, college tuition, money, all for Michael, while Warren worked himself to exhaustion. Did you ever question why they treated him differently? Martinez asked. I questioned it constantly, Michael admitted, but I never imagined he was kidnapped, that I was living off ransom money. Cross tried to soften the impact. Despite the differences, Warren was never physically abused, correct? Correct. He had a roof over his head? Food? Education? Yes. So your parents provided basic necessities. Michael looked directly at Alan and Leslie. Basic necessities aren't love. A house isn't a home if you're made to feel like you don't belong. They gave him survival, not life. And the only reason they kept him was because getting rid of him would expose their crime. The courtroom fell silent. On day 5, I took the stand. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity. People stood in the back. Federal marshals turned away overflow crowds. I was sworn in. My arm was out of the cast, but still in a brace. 4 months of physical therapy had helped, but I'd likely never fully recover. Martinez approached. "May I call you Warren?" "You can call me James. That's who I've been for 30 years. Tell the jury about growing up in the Albert household." For 90 minutes, I described my childhood, never being hugged or told, "I love you." Watching Michael get celebrated while I was ignored. Sending money to them for years, trying to earn approval. The factory accident and the phone call where Alan abandoned me. "Did you ever feel loved by Alan and Leslie?" Martinez asked. "No, never. I thought something was wrong with me, that I wasn't good enough. I spent 30 years trying to figure out what I'd done to make them hate me. And now you know the truth. Now I know I didn't do anything wrong. They hated me because I was evidence." Cross tried to establish bias. "You've inherited a substantial fortune, correct?" "I stand to inherit a portion of my family's wealth someday, yes." "So you have a financial incentive to see Alan and Leslie convicted." I looked directly at the jury. "I would give every dollar back, every penny of that $4.7 billion, to have grown up knowing I was wanted, to have had a mother who hugged me, a father who was proud of me. Money has nothing to do with why I'm here. I'm here because Alan and Leslie stole my life, and they need to be held accountable." The courtroom erupted in whispers. On day 8, Leslie took the stand against her attorney's advice. She admitted everything through tears: the planning, the kidnapping, the ransom calls, creating my false identity. Martinez asked why they didn't return me after the first payment. "We were scared," Leslie said, voice breaking. "We'd already committed a felony. We thought if we gave him back, we'd go to prison. And then time passed, and it felt too late." "You said you couldn't love him. Explain that," Leslie cried openly. "I tried to love him, but every hug felt like a lie. When Michael was born, my biological son, loving him came naturally. That made me feel even more guilty about Warren, so I pushed Warren away. It was easier to be cold. You made a 2-year-old pay for your crime for 30 years. "Yes," Leslie whispered. "Yes, I did." Alan never testified. He sat stone-faced throughout the trial, showing no remorse. Martinez delivered his closing argument. Alan and Leslie Albert committed one of the most cruel crimes imaginable. They made a child feel unwanted for 30 years. They stole birthdays, Christmases, graduations. They built an entire false identity and trapped Warren Williams inside it. And when he needed them most, they abandoned him. Find them guilty on all counts. Give Warren Williams the justice he's been denied for 30 years. The jury deliberated for 3 days. I didn't sleep. I paced the estate, unable to eat. On the 3rd day, at 2:47 p.m., the call came. The jury had reached a verdict. We rushed back to the courthouse. I sat between Paul and Lisa, gripping their hands. Michael sat 2 rows behind us, alone. The judge entered. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The foreman stood. "We have." "Your Honor?" The courtroom fell silent. "On the charge of kidnapping across state lines, how do you find?" The foreman looked directly at Alan and Leslie. "We find the defendants guilty." Leslie collapsed, wailing. Alan closed his eyes. The judge continued. "Extortion. Count 1, guilty extortion. Count 2, guilty extortion. Count 3, guilty wire, fraud, guilty identity, theft, guilty conspiracy, guilty obstruction of justice, guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted. People cheered. The judge gavelled for order. I sat frozen, unable to process. It was over. Paul pulled me into a hug. Lisa cried. Violet reached from behind to squeeze my shoulder. 2 weeks later, we reconvened for sentencing. Judge Patricia Brennan reviewed everything, then addressed Alan and Leslie directly. In 30 years as a federal judge, I have never seen a crime like this. You didn't just kidnap a child. You psychologically tortured him for 30 years. She paused. Mr. Albert, you showed no remorse. You offered no apology. Alan stared straight ahead, still defiant. Mrs. Albert, you cooperated, but your remorse came 30 years too late. She delivered the sentences. Alan Robert Albert, life in prison without parole, plus 60 years. Leslie Marie Albert, 35 years in federal prison, eligible for parole after 28 years. Alan showed no reaction. Leslie sobbed uncontrollably. Judge Brennan looked at me. Mr. Williams, would you like to address the defendants? I stood and walked to the front of the courtroom, 10 feet from Alan and Leslie. You called me worthless, I began. You told me I'd never amount to anything. You made me believe I was a burden. A mistake. Leslie sobbed. James, I'm so sorry. I'm not finished. The judge allowed it. You stole 30 years of my life. You extorted $3 million from desperate parents. You raised me in a house where I was treated like I didn't belong. Because to you, I never did. I was evidence. A secret. I paused. But here's what you didn't count on. I survived. Despite your coldness, your neglect, your abuse, I became a good man. I worked hard. I tried to be kind even when the world wasn't kind to me. I became everything you're not. I pulled out a document. Your Honor, I want them to know what I'm doing with the life they tried to destroy. I unfolded a press release. The Williams family has established the Warren Williams Foundation for Missing and Exploited Children. We're funding it with an initial endowment of $50 million, with plans to reach $200 million within 5 years. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Every child we help find, every family we reunite, that's your legacy now. Every kidnapper we help catch, that's justice for what you did to me. I paused. You wanted to erase me. You wanted me to disappear. But instead, I'm going to make sure every missing child has the chance I almost lost. Alan's face finally cracked. The realization hit. I hadn't just defeated them. I'd turned their crime into something that would outlast them all. I don't hate you anymore, I said. Hatred would keep me tied to you. But I will never forgive you. What you did is unforgivable. I turned to the judge. That's all, Your Honor. As marshals moved to escort Alan and Leslie out, Alan turned back. His lips moved silently. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. I watched as they were led away in handcuffs, heading to separate federal prisons where they'd spend their remaining years. Paul put a hand on my shoulder. It's over. They can't hurt you anymore. As we left the courthouse, I stopped on the steps. Reporters swarmed with microphones. I spoke directly into the cameras. The trial is over. Alan and Leslie Albert will spend the rest of their lives in prison, and I will spend the rest of mine making sure no other child suffers what I did. The Warren Williams Foundation launches next month. We're coming for every kidnapper, every person who thinks they can steal a child and get away with it. I looked into the cameras. They tried to erase me. Instead, they created someone who won't stop until every missing child comes home. The crowd erupted in cheers. 18 months later, I stood in front of a university auditorium at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. 800 students filled the seats. "My name is Warren Williams," I began. "But for 30 years, I was James Albert. I worked in a factory. I lived paycheck to paycheck. I thought I knew who I was. I was wrong about everything." I told my story, enough of it, the accident, the FBI, the DNA test, the trial, the verdict. "I could have let anger consume me," I said, but I realized something. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's transformation. I showed slides of the Foundation's work. 43 missing children located and reunited with families, resources provided to 800-plus families, DNA testing funded for 2,500-plus cases, partnerships with FBI and 200-plus law enforcement agencies, new legislation in 12 states. "Every child we help find," I said, emotion in my voice, "every family we reunite. That's justice." After the speech, I visited the Foundation headquarters in Madison, a modern building with 50 employees working cases. On the lobby wall was a memorial, photos of every child we'd helped find. My photo as a toddler was in the center. Underneath, "Every child deserves to be found. Every family deserves closure." That evening, I went to the Williams estate for weekly family dinner. Paul, Lisa, Violet, Violet's fiancé, David, and me. Paul raised his wine glass. "To family, to second chances." We clinked glasses. Violet wiped tears. Lisa kept touching my hand. Later, I sat alone in my room, the childhood room, now renovated for an adult. The growth chart was still on the wall. Warren, 2 years, 34 inches, April 1994. Warren, 32 years, 6'1", April 2024. I added a new line. Warren, 34 years, finally free, April 2026. I opened my laptop and continued writing my memoir. Stolen, finding myself after 30 years of living someone else's lie. I typed, "This is not a story about kidnapping, though I was kidnapped. It's not about revenge, though I sought justice. It's about identity, discovering that who you are isn't defined by the people who raised you or the name you were given. It's defined by the choices you make after the truth is revealed. For 30 years, I was James Albert, unloved, unwanted, invisible. Now, I am Warren Williams, found, whole, healing. Alan and Leslie Albert stole 30 years from me. They will not steal one more day." My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "Saw your speech online. 43 kids found. That's incredible. I'm proud of you. M." I stared at the message, then typed, "You'll always be my brother, Michael. Different now, but still family. Come to dinner next week." I walked to the window overlooking the estate. The sun was setting over the lake, casting golden light across the lawns. This was supposed to be my view every day. Instead, I got 30 years in poverty with people who looked at me with guilt and resentment. I thought about Alan and Leslie, 18 months into their prison sentences. Alan in Colorado, Leslie in California. They'd never see each other again. I thought about Alan's voice after the accident. "Don't bother us with this." That moment defined my transformation. That's when I stopped being their victim. I pulled out my phone and reviewed my 5-year plan. Expand Foundation internationally. Help find 200-plus missing children. Publish memoir. Complete physical therapy. Learn who Warren Williams is supposed to be. I closed my laptop and stood at the window. I thought about 2-year-old Warren, handed through a window to kidnappers. I thought about 8-year-old James, standing alone with a diploma nobody cared about. I thought about 32-year-old James in a hospital bed with a crushed arm and a phone that wouldn't ring. And I thought about 34-year-old Warren, running a foundation that's changed hundreds of lives. I whispered to myself, a promise. Alan and Leslie tried to erase me. They tried to make me disappear. They tried to convince me I was worthless. I looked at my reflection in the window. Instead, they created someone who won't stop until every stolen child comes home. Someone who turned their crime into justice. Someone stronger than they could ever imagine. I turned from the window, ready for whatever comes next, because for the first time in 34 years, Warren Williams, formerly James Albert, knows exactly who he is: a survivor, an advocate, a son, a brother, and most importantly, free.